into a new week of Beyond the Arc here on High School Cube News. Brian Chimino back with you with Michael O'Brien of the Chicago Sun-Times. Big games last week, the Public League tournament tipping off. First two rounds already in the books, and we had some good games and some off-the-court matters that we're not going to really touch on as of yet. But, Mike, the big game last week, Orr and Morgan Park. Orr had some controversy before the game. Turned out it didn't really matter.
Orr didn't have their coach. Lou Adams says he decided not to coach. They didn't have their best player for the last few weeks, Levante Sutton, who was in street clothes. And they didn't have Raekwon Drake, the star freshman, who is playing with the sophomores in the sophomore city tournament. None of this matters. They go out and they beat Morgan Park. They lead the whole game. You know, Orr shot 8 for 16 from three-point range in the first half. That really kind of set the tone. And then they managed to gut it out at the end. It was pretty much the most shocking game of the year. A lot of fun to watch. Orr, has a lot of guys who can play. They've got a lot of transfers. There's a lot of stuff surrounding them. It'll be interesting to see how far they can, kind of make this playoff run go. And what does Morgan Park do now? They did not expect to be out this soon. This gives them a lot of time off, really. They have a couple games they could schedule, but, it's early February, and playoffs don't start until March, so all of a sudden Morgan Park's got a lot of time on their hands.
And another good second-round game was Bogan getting by Curie by 2 points. Antonio Thomas was the hero for the Bengals, not Lawan Pipkins, but Curie also having some off-the-court matters that may have cost them that game.
Yeah, it was not a dull weekend in the CPS. It really never is. Antonio Thomas, who'd quit the team in early January, is back, and he's playing well. And Bogan was really happy after this game, which was kind of notable because Coach Arthur Goodwin, after every other game this season, has been kind of despondent. He didn't know what was wrong with his team. He was thrilled. They didn't play well. Really, they didn't play as well as they could, and they still beat Curie, a really good team. He thinks it's the sign that Bogan, things are finally clicking. Maybe their chemistry is a little bit better. They don't need Pipkins to score 30 to win. The other guys are picking things up. So I think we could look back on this as the time Bogan really got it together. And then Curie, on the other hand, Josh Stamps, and Malik Washington, two seniors, were late for the bus. I guess they didn't miss it, to get to the game. So Mike Oliver, the Curie coach, sat them for the first quarter. Then you lose by 2 points without two of your best players playing the first 8 minutes. So, maybe this obviously just probably isn't Curie's year. Things aren't gelling really, but there's so much young talent. Terry Smith Jr., Elijah Joyner, you saw freshmen and sophomores playing really well in a high-level CPS playoff game. So the future for Curie is really bright.
So quarterfinals for the Public League tournament taking place this coming Sunday. We'll preview some of those matchups on our 5 Things to Watch edition of Beyond the Arc later in the week. What about Thornwood? All the way up to number 9 from number 18 after a good week.
Yeah, I went out and watched Thornwood beat Thornton. Thornwood is one of these teams, if you haven't seen them yet, they pass the look test. They're long, they're athletic. They got really dynamic guards that can shoot. They have big men in the post that can do things. Thornwood has everything it needs to be a top-notch team, and they're playing that way now. 10 consecutive wins. The win over Thornton was something else. And this is something I didn't know before I was down there talking with the team. They haven't lost at home in 2 years. They didn't lose all of last season, and they haven't lost it yet this season. So, the gym in South Holland is turning into a fortress for the Thunderbirds. So it's really nice to see them taking that nice step, and they're going to be a team to watch and coming through the playoffs in March.
In the next week or so, sectional seedings will be taking place. And what about Lake Park? They're in the running for a top seed in that Barrington sectional after a nice win over Wheaton Warrenville South.
Yeah, Lake Park is one of these teams, they don't have an individual star. They don't have anybody you've heard of. Marcus McDaniel, a guard, is kind of one of their better players. They play really, really good defense, and they've shocked some good teams. They won Wheeling, they beat Notre Dame, which I think everybody started to really notice and wonder about Lake Park. I guess I would say they're better than I expected. They are a threat. They don't do anything wrong. They can shoot kind of well. They're a little bit like Lake Zurich up north, a team you don't want to mess with that could make a nice run in the playoffs, especially in a sectional that isn't the greatest.
And what about Rich South going into the McDipper? We weren't sure what they got. They got to the championship game, and since then they've been pretty solid.
Yeah, it's been a good couple weeks for the South Suburbs. They'd receded the last few years, but if you look at it now, Bolingbrook picked up a huge win down in O'Fallon. They're on a 9-game winning streak. And Rich South, it's time that Scott Ritter got some credit, their coach. He is one of the best coaches in the state. You see it time and time again. He doesn't need a superstar to have a really, really good team. Jeremy Ruffin is, a nice post player, 6'4" guy. He's tough. He can hit a mid-range jumper. And most importantly, we talk about this a lot, they have a point guard. Dedrick Shannon Jr., he's a transfer from Richards. He is rock solid and runs the team, exactly how Ritter wants. They're going to be a real threat the rest of the season in the Southland.
Last week we previewed a big matchup in the Central Suburban League South Division, and it was Evanston beating Maine South in Evanston last week. Evanston having sort of a bipolar week. They won 2 big games, also against Riverside Brookfield, but then losing a rough one to Fremd.
Yeah, I mean, this is what happens, I guess, when sophomores are running your team. It's ups and it's downs. I mean, in a lot of ways, to me, they really exposed Maine South. I mean, if you watched that game, it was on YouTube. Maine South just missed a lot of little layups. To me, they just didn't have what it takes to be a Super 25 team. They hadn't had the wins before that, but they had the nice record. Evanston played a nice game, even with Nogel Eastern missing a significant chunk of it, injured, and then they come back and drop it to Fremd. And Fremd's not a bad team. They were undefeated for a lot of last year. They had some of those kids back. But yeah, it's just disappointing that they can't put the consistency together.
Also a new team in the Super 25. We talked about St. Ignatius having a big game against St. Joe's. They won, and they are at number 25.
Yeah, they're one of those teams. Great coach, good point guard with Riley Duty. They got the things you want. They've got a tough one on Tuesday that's going to determine the Catholic League North, DePaul against St. Ignatius. Both of those teams are kind of on the bubble in the rankings, to be honest, and whoever wins that one is probably the team that's going to stick.
And that'll do it for this edition of Beyond the Arc here on High School Cube News. A reminder, the No Shot Clock podcast dropping every Tuesday on your favorite podcast app. For Michael O'Brien, I'm Brian Chimino. We'll see you later in the week for a whole new edition of 5 Things to Watch here on High School Cube News.